Good morning. We have two scriptures this morning, one from John 21 and one from Corinthians. Later, Jesus again was manifested to the disciples at Lake Tiberias. This is how the appearance took place. Assembled were Simon Peter, Thomas the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, Zebedee's children, and two other disciples. Simon Peter said to them, "I'm going out to fish." "We'll join you," they replied, and went off to get into their boat. All through the night, they caught nothing. Just after daybreak, Jesus was standing on the shore, though none of the disciples knew it was Jesus. He said to them, "Have you caught anything, friends?" "Not a thing," they answered. "Well, cast off your net off the starboard side," Jesus suggested, "and you'll find something." So they made a cast and caught so many fish that they couldn't haul the net in. And from Corinthians, love never fails. Prophecies will cease, tongues will be silent, knowledge will pass away. Our knowledge is imperfect, and our prophesying is imperfect. When the perfect comes, the imperfect will pass away. When I was a child, I used to speak like a child, think like a child, reason like a child. But when I became an adult, I put childish ways aside. Now we see indistinctly as in a mirror. Then we will see face to face. My knowledge is imperfect now. Then I will know even as I am known. There are, in the end, three things that last: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. Words from our tradition for our present day consideration.
Well, it's good to be back. Good to see everybody. It's wonderful to see everybody. I'm grateful for the people that covered. Usually when I go, get a lot of complaints about the sermons, but everybody loved the whole month, so that's for next time. But I'm grateful to the whole church. Definitely, if I ever do finish this book, it will be our book and not mine, because for 40 years here, I have searched for a gift I want to give you and the world, and it's been very distracting from a lot of times what I should be doing, and this church absolutely steps in, covers. I've never seen anything like it. But there's a gift that I want to give that I've never been able to say, and I've worked on it, probably 50 years trying to get this book going. Because when I was in Sunday school, I had a distinct feeling as a kid that I'd been given a shell where the original animal had left. I've been given a candle where the flame had blown out. And I wanted to know what was there originally. What is it that people were willing to live and die for? I don't think it was traditional Presbyterian dogma. I could be mistaken. I could be, because it's pretty exciting stuff. Over the years, I've studied the mystery religions of the ancient world. I've studied the Hindu, Buddhist, trying to find what was that mixture that was there. I'm so glad we have a sitar today. That is such good timing, because this is a weirdo sermon, which I don't usually need to say that. But I'm going to try to share as best I can. What happened this time was I started to write, and I just realized how tired I was. I just realized it's probably been 30 years since I've really taken a vacation, because my job is my hobby. That can be a problem. When I'm on my own, I don't tell the session this, but I would have done this for free. I I'm serious. I mean, not the administrative part, but but the stewardship part. I'm so good. A special thanks to the stewardship committee that had the drive while I was gone, which probably was not an accident. It's sort of like a bowling ball rolling on the floor. Don't make them feel guilty. Don't make them feel guilty. Because I want you to know, and I think you know, that your life is what's important to us. You making sense of that? And we're about to go into what is possibly going to be a very hard time. It is probably going to be a very hard time. And Christianity and the mystery religions grew out of times like this. But what they did was they took people deeper into who they are. They didn't ask people to believe that there's invisible beings or that something happened a long time ago. What they were doing were tour guides into the depths of human perception. This is my belief. That even if you don't believe in religion at all, you're completely an atheist, you're still an expression of something larger than yourself of which you're a part. And your life isn't going to make sense if you live it for yourself. You're still the expression of a depth, a mysterious depth of which you're an expression, and you're never going to feel complete until you give yourself to that mysterious something that animates you, that gives you life. And because everything in the universe interrelates, everyone and everything is addressing you somehow. Everything interacts. And so what you're looking for is always here and always now. And I believe these three mysticisms were what inspired the original Trinity. But that kind of got broke, right? I mean, I think that Christianity started way before, the mystics, Jesus and the mystics, and then the organizers came, right? And they said, let's turn this into curriculum. Let's turn this into stuff. We can't wait till people love others like they love themselves. That's too, you can't really quantify that. You got to, let's turn it into dogma, rituals. That's all measurable. Rules. I want to know what it was that originally inspired the amazing stories that we hear from the past. I think what we've got are the lumps of coal from a long dead volcano. But I also believe we can get it back again. When you read the early church, they talk about the mysteries. And they promise that they didn't share the mysteries with outsiders. That tells you that the essence of Christianity is what's not being taught. I would like for us to move towards a new chapter to train people into a kind of deep, natural mysticism that blossoms into science and into art and into activism. Not by getting them to believe in something that may or may not be true, but to go more profoundly into our own roots, into things, to feel the web of life as our home, to feel the cosmic process that we express. So I'm going to try in the next 10 weeks to kind of dance around this thing. The last night of the last day, I got sick the last week, which was bad in some ways, but it was good in other ways in that I couldn't really think. So I was just feeling, just kind of sitting there. And I kept seeing Escher pictures. We're going to look at those strange sketches. Do the first one here. Those strange sketches where it twists the mind to look at them. We'll look at people going upstairs, downstairs, and shapes that twist. I really believe that's what a religious symbol is supposed to do. To deepen, to twist, to widen your ability to perceive. From the inside out. You're not going to have to trust anybody to do this. It will ring true or it won't in your own way. What the teacher does is try to find that little tuning fork inside of you and find what that resonates to. What song, what dance? Is it logic? Is it music? Is it service? Is it gardening? Because nobody from the outside can know what that is. But when you're taught a false beginning place, that's really hard. I'm going to try not to preach for 30 minutes. I'm going to try to speed this up. But this, I can already feel I need to stop explaining so much stuff as I go. But thank you for your patience over the years. You're on a plane that has crashed 999 times when I've tried to take it off in the past. But I think I'm getting closer. So we'll see whether this happens or not. In these stories, Jesus, in our tradition, but it was Dionysus, Orpheus, the story's been told countless times of somebody who symbolizes the essence of your soul, the greatness of your soul. When Jesus says, I am this, I am that, he's not talking about himself. Right? I was taught Jesus is the most supreme narcissist of all time. But then when I studied Hinduism, saw that it's talking about the great self. It's somebody who is so in love with everything that when they say I, it includes you and me too. That Jesus wanted to lead us to that. But to do that at the different levels requires a transformation at each stage. If you go around the world, that usually it gets projected out as astrology. It gets internalized as chakras. What's important in all of it, including what I'm going to say, is the experience of you feeling your roots into life, into nature. I don't see that as speculative at all. Like if we put God and Jesus in timeout, where did you come from? Right, you're an expression of something. It's your expression of the cosmos, your expression of the web of life. So we're trying to go deeper into that. We're going to look at some of the stories. The story we're going to look at today, we're going to look at a bunch of stories in the next, we're going to go into Christmas with this, which I hope won't be a terrible, terrible mistake. We'll bail if it's not working by then, but I think it'll be a wonderful Christmas. Because Christmas has these paradoxes all over the place. And Christmas is the one time when people can understand the mysticism of Christmas. The light shining out of the darkness, the Virgin Mother, well, maybe they don't get that one, but that these are paradoxes that talk about the depths of life. Because at the surface of life, everything looks paradoxical and frightening beneath you. So in our story today, Peter is going to go fishing. Unfortunately for Peter, he kind of represents the kind of bumbling idiot in these enlightenment stories. He represents the human ego. And in this story, he's in the boat, and he looks down, and he can't see the fish right beneath him. But see, in our story, that doesn't come out. In some of the other stories, this becomes real obvious. That he's in the boat, the savior person, the great self, is on the shoreline. So from the ego, basically what you see is your own reflection. Right? So Peter has the unfortunate role of playing the role of the ego. Which when you see it in these stories, don't get attached to that character. It's sort of like the guy on Star Trek with the red shirt that's going to beam down to look at the dangerous condition on this planet. He's not coming back. The point is not to enlighten the ego. The point is not to embed the ego. The point is for the ego to realize it's at the surface. So it dissolves in the depths and then comes back again when it's useful for you to be an individual and a person. So in this story, he's looking, but it reflects back on him. But nope. Could you go back? What I love about this, those are two self-portraits. That's the Presbyterian version. When I say that, I'm really talking about the traditional Orthodox bullying Christianity. What I'm really talking about is people who claim to be the custodians of the teachings of Jesus because they were able to kill everybody that was smarter than them. Which to me is not real good evidence that somebody. So, but this other one, this is what a symbol does. And what a ritual is dancing that. It's singing it. It's making it art. This is trying to stretch out your vision of things, your perception of things. He's a picture of himself, but see how everything else is reflected in it. Probably some of this stuff for a lot of us will take deep meditation. But when you meditate deeply, you begin to feel that the deeper you go inside yourself, the more it's everything. Right? It's hard to think yourself to that. So to gain the capacity and the trust to dissolve into your depths, that's not easy because each level has defenses to keep you from, the ego does not want to let go. Right? I mean, the ego wants to dissolve into the whole, but it wants to have a mansion in the sky. It wants guarantees. It wants to see everybody it ever knew. And it's not bad. The starting place is not bad. That's the only starting place we have. Right? But the problem is when you live in the boat and you think that's who you are. This is called the Trumpian level of karma. You think that your value comes from what you own. You think that your strength and courage comes from who you can dominate and bully. And we have much of a nation that is in that place, and you can't fight it because it's already afraid. What it's going to take is getting bigger, deeper. The early church was very political too. That's another thing that's fallen out of it. It's going to take the early church was socialistic. It was very much against every kind of hierarchy. So we're going to have to get that element too, but I believe it has to come from the depths of your being. This has to be something that nobody gave you, including me. Right? It's somebody who jingles the bell to you. Oh yeah, I've always known that. That's what it's going to feel. It's not going to feel like, oh, gee, I've never thought of that before. It's going to be, I've always known that. I was tricked out of acting on that. I was tricked out of living that. In the stories too, we're not quite there yet, but thank you for trying to anticipate. I'm horrible with this style because I forget every time. There's a symbol of duality at each level. When you see the devil, that's duality. Little goat horns, little cloven hooves, a little fork. The sophisticated mystics didn't believe in goat people. But in our story, it's Thomas. When you see Thomas, does anybody know what that word means in Hebrew? Twin. Thomas Didymus means twin in Greek. Why do you suppose they would put that in there? Thomas is the one that everything had. Plato used to say that if you're not initiated, everything has to fit in your hand. Only the initiated can trust the invisible. So Thomas, all of these are mythological characters. They may have existed in reality, but it's been the story has been crafted to help you and me get through what is terrifying us, what's preventing us. In these enlightenment things, we're looking at a fishing metaphor today, but and we'll be looking at that, I think, next week too. But going into a cave was very popular. And sometimes on the cave when you first went in, it said, know thyself. And it doesn't mean know thyself like go to Freud. It's know who you are all the way up and down. right? Know that you're human, know that you're animal. Culture punish you if you make animal noises, you know? It's like you're punished for leaving the boat. So, and the more comfortable you make religion at the surface level, the less likely you're going to get deep. It's better if the symbols contradict each other, because you don't want to live in the symbols. You don't want to live in rituals. You want to live in life. This is calling you to life, not to religion, not to the church. That was the passion they had. That's the passion I have. Not only that each of us here experienced that, but we learned how to share that. Not to share Christianity, not to convert people, but to help people find who they are. Because we're in a nation of people who don't know that. And so they're going to let the planet die beneath their feet because they don't know that's their deeper self. And they're terrified of the end of things because they don't know there's something deeper than living and dying. Paul wrote in Corinthians, it comes, I think, at least influenced by the mystery religions. He says, love never fails. Now, love to Paul wasn't just an emotion. It was all of the virtues. It was a profound experience that put everything together. He said, prophecies will cease. Now think about somebody from the Bible saying that. Right? Somebody who wrote the Bible says, the prophecy stuff is good, but it's foam. Right? If it doesn't lead you, then it's foam. He says, tongues will be silent. That's speaking in tongues. That's charismatic stuff. Somebody who wrote the Bible said, that's not going to be worth anything without love. He says, knowledge will pass away. Gosh, if they'd known that before Galileo, you know what I'm saying? Or today, when you have the Texas legislature trying to go back to the future. Our knowledge is imperfect. This is somebody, do you think that person wants you to take the Bible literally? Our knowledge is imperfect. We can't get there with our minds alone. He says, the imperfect will pass away when the perfect comes. When I was a child, I used to speak like a child, think like a child, reason like a child. But when I became an adult, I put childish ways aside. Now we see indistinctly in a mirror. At the end of the initiation, a lot of times you'd be shown a mirror. And I don't know what that meant. They didn't have mirrors like we do. They were like polished metal. And I think the idea is if you can see that you're all of it, then you're ready. If you still think you're Jim Rigby living at so-and-so, working at so-and-so, you got some work to do on your roots. Now we see indistinctly as in a mirror, then we shall see face to face. It's not about belief, right? It's about relationship. It's not about truth, it's about reality. What is the reality of your life? I think that's what they're asking. Okay, I'm going to speed up a lot. Okay. Is this making sense? A little bit? Well, pretend. Just pretend, that's all I have. And then after I leave the room, you go, what? And then the fish. Thank you. What I like about this is a picture of a tree that's on a rippling surface of a lake. When we start off, we think we're seeing the world objectively. But there's always an interrelationship that's there. And we start off seeing a whole lot more of our own projection than we see of other people. And if you do not hold yourself to the fire with science, reason, testing, communication, all of those things, you'll live in these phantoms. Jesus in the story is a phantom. He manifests on the lake. But it's a vision. It's something that's, you're waking up. You're putting a personal face on this profound lesson. The fish is going to represent the life within, the insights within, all this stuff that's within, that's in the dark, that just needs to be lifted up where you can see it. And fish sort of represented that because you could see them going into the dark and coming up into the light. Seeds represented it because sometimes they're dead and sometimes they're alive. Angels, because they were human beings, but they had bird wings, which is very helpful. The point is to build a bridge between your rational self and your irrational self. And to realize that you cannot know yourself like you know an object. That is the dualism that's going to be underneath some of these imageries. I want to know myself like an object. When Freud studied people, he turned them into like these, water under pressure. That's what makes a human being. John Paul Sartre said that's bad faith, when you turn yourself into an object. So we're both of those. We're a mystery in between those kind of thing. And it's going to happen at each stage along the way. Jesus is going to be the guide that takes us between our fears and our desires, between our friends and our enemies, and even our living and our dying. If we do not have that depth, if we're not living out of that depth, we're at the surface terrified by all change. We're terrified by people we can't control. We're terrified by people who are different than us because our self is the only template we have. The essence of white supremacy and patriarchy and all of these things is not that you hate people who are different, but you think you're the norm. You think you're the measuring rod and everybody else is an inferior version. So there has to be an awakening, a transformation at each stage along the way. Okay, we're at the third point, which is good. We're going to get home by nightfall. Could we do the last one? This doesn't really fit in today's sermon, but I think it's important to have it because it's kind of a spoiler kind of thing about where the airplane is supposed to land eventually. And I actually had a dream that was like this once where I had died and I wasn't going to heaven, I was going to wherever that screening place is. Yeah, where you put your application in, and they do the computer background check kind of thing. So I'm sitting there and the person's kind of looking at it, but it's in a UFO. You know how dreams are, It has to be something that makes you sound like an idiot or, it's not a good dream. But the person looks up sad and says, "I'm sorry." I'm a Presbyterian minister. Well, I guess y'all saw through that a long time ago. But then in the dream, I'm thinking, okay, there's no way my source can reject me. That's not even logically possible. Whatever's willing me into being, everybody else, everything else might reject it. But what's willing me into being, by definition, wants me here. So all of a sudden, another hand, which let's say was Jesus, but it could have been Karl Rove, I'm not sure. But whoever it was started unzipping my head all the way down. And this is, I think, the kind of experience that is here, where the ego is unraveling into the sky, into the wholeness, into the transcendent. Because the bottom level that I know about, and there's a whole lot more I'm sure that I don't know about, but that they talked about was very close to Einstein's space-time continuum that has mathematical properties. That's what the net symbolizes in the Pythagorean religion, and I believe is a part of this too. That as you unravel, to never forget that there's a net that will hold you no matter what. Now think if we remember that coming into the next couple of weeks. We may need it. And to realize if you're waiting on a medical verdict and you can't breathe, to realize that's very important. It's very important, but it's not ultimately who you are. And then when we look at what's happening to our country and what may happen to our country, That's very important, and we need to do everything we can do. But to realize that whatever happens, that is not ultimately who we are. And even if we fix everything, the galaxy is still going to collapse sometime. So what this voice says is let go. In the, I love, this is my favorite, I probably chose the wrong religion, but the Dancing Shiva. You know, it's the circle of time and fire and all the, all this falderall about what reality is. And then it's all taking place on a sleeping idiot. Which I think is probably the ego, right? But that's the only starting place we have, and we wake up back in that all the time. So if we can remember the way into depth, you can be learned, you can be trained, but this is stuff you've done your whole life, but you didn't know how to recognize it when it was happening sometimes. Or maybe you did. But what if as you go into the future of your life, you live it as freely and positively as you can, because you know that you're manifesting, like Jesus was on the lake. Right? You're not getting somewhere else. You're manifesting goodness, greatness, kindness, love, wisdom, humor. And what if the depths being expressed through you is enough? What if you go into this next week remembering you are part of something that is bigger than you, that makes your life have sense and meaning? But it doesn't belong to you, you belong to it. And what if you remember you come from a depth, the very ground of being? You can't see what it is, but you don't have to figure that out. Whatever it is, you are a beloved expression of it. Maybe love is too strong a word, but it sounds good to me sometimes. But you wouldn't be here if it weren't expressing you. And then finally, that you're never really alone, because everything in the universe interacts, resonates. And so every bush you're ever going to see is really a burning bush if you'll get still. If you will experience it in between your hopes and your fears, your likes and your dislikes. You'll find that depth of being that is beyond birth and death. I don't know what it is, but I could feel it in there somewhere. Jesus is a symbol of what meets you in the boat when you're confused and scared. It opens to Christ, which is there as the net that says, whatever happens, there's something there to catch you. And so let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. That's my best attempt. We always take a moment to think about these. They may need 2 minutes. So thank you so much for your patience in listening to this stuff all through the years. We invite you to a time of reflection.